What's up, guys? Before we get into this video, I just wanted to share some exciting news. Karl from Make It Customs, a really good mate of mine, is on his way over from Canada and coming to Australia, which is very exciting. I'm sure a lot of you already know that. He is going to be in WA. He's coming to stay with me for a week. You know, we got lots to catch up on. Haven't seen him since last year, so it's going to be pretty exciting. It's his first time to see the workshop. And hopefully we'll have it nice and tidy and clean, and maybe some new tools in here by the time he gets here. But we are wanting to have you guys come down and be able to meet him while he's here. So April 29th, Saturday from 3 p.m. onwards, we are going to do a shop night, and Karl will be attending. So it'd be really exciting for, you know, anyone that's kind of in the surrounding area, up in Perth or wherever you want. If you want to do a road trip from over east, by all means. It's kind of short notice, but enough notice to hopefully you guys can sort out accommodation if you wanted to come down and spend the weekend down here. We are going to have some beer and some food by purchase. We will have tap facilities as well. If you do bring cash, we are doing a 50-50 draw, which will be pretty exciting. We'll have some t-shirts and stuff for sale as well. But basically, we just want you guys to come down, bring your car. We'll have a little, you know, kind of show and shine out the front again like we've done in the past. And we just wanted to basically have a little meet and greet and give you guys the opportunity to come and meet Karl. I think he's really looking forward to it as much as we are. Yeah, we'll have some fun things kind of going on. Maybe do something fun in the workshop while you guys are here. But yeah, all in all, we'll just have a couple beers, have some music going, and have a feed, and you know, get to know everybody. And make sure, if you guys are interested in coming down, just flick us an email, and just so we can kind of get an idea on numbers, just for basically for food and beers, making sure we have enough. So if you guys are interested, drop us an email, let us know that you guys are going to come down if you want, and yeah, and the address will also be in the link down below as well. Just make sure that is the 29th of April for 3 p.m. onwards, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys. Let's get into this video. Jordan from Bennett's Customs, we're back on another episode. On this one, we are doing something a little bit different. We're working on my mate's Glenn's coupe, and as you can see underneath, I've just finished fabricating an entire stainless exhaust system for it. Yeah, it was obviously quite intricate to try and kind of make it through the whole tubular K-member and the rest, and yeah, kind of modified the headers and everything to make it work. Was able to kind of fit in just a little kind of detachable using the V-Bands H-pipe that's in here, and then we have the Flowmaster series exhaust. So fingers crossed this thing will sound good. I think it will, which is really exciting. And moving kind of towards the back, there's obviously a big void here, and this void is what this whole video is basically going to be on. So I need to make a custom aluminum fuel cell that will, you know, hold as much fuel as possible, because this thing does have a blower on it. So, you know, obviously it's going to be thirsty, so we need to make sure that we can allocate as much space as possible with the small amount of space that we have. So it's going to be really cool. I'll basically make the entire thing out of some straw board, and we can use those templates, and I'll have to build some internal baffles. We got the sender, a fuel neck, a bunch of fittings to weld in for the fuel out and return, as well as a breather and a bung just for draining if needed. So it's going to be, yeah, obviously pretty intricate to try and get it to fit all up in here. So what we're going to do is just get a piece of paper, jot down some measurements, and then we'll apply that to some cardboard. And then, yeah, we'll see if we can create something for his coupe. So once the fuel's done, then he's got a whole lot more work to do on it, but at least my job's done, and he can continue working on it. So let's get into it. right, in order to make this fuel cell, I obviously need some cardboard, and this is what I usually use. This is called straw board, and it is quite thick. This one's like probably nearly almost 3 mil. I believe this one's close to 2, maybe almost 2.5 mil. And then we have some other stuff that's maybe about 2. And these were just kind of spares. Luckily, I was able to get some. This is 24 ounce and this is 48 ounce. So usually I use the 24 ounce for all my templates. That's usually the cardboard that I use for everything. It's super durable. It's really strong. It holds its shape really nice. So in order to do templates and you know, you want them to not kind of fall over or have like a slight bend or anything to them, this is definitely the stuff I use. It also works really well for using the plasma cutter. As you guys have seen in previous videos, I've used this stuff and cut around it with the plasma a ton, and it doesn't burn. Like, if it burns a very small amount, but it doesn't, you know, it still holds its rigidity and its structure, and usually works. So this is what we are going to use to, you know, make it. And then I will grab the components that we are using for the tank as well. All right, so for all the bungs and fittings, we are using just an Aeroflow. I just get it from my mate, and yeah, it's just obviously easy to order through a catalog. So here we got some 3/8 bungs that we can weld into the frame, or into the aluminum itself. And then we have our -6 fittings. Just did some 90-degree ones. He is just running a 3/8 hose for this. I don't think he'll be running anything bigger. It does have a blower on it, but I think it's just, he's keeping it very mild. It's more just kind of a show, maybe not so much go, but I'm assuming it'll still have a fair amount of poke to it. And then we have our universal cap. So this will just be easily welded on. It's very low profile. This is kind of what we were trying to achieve. And this will just spin off and he'll be able to fill it. And then we have a universal style fuel sender that is kind of adjustable and ranges anywhere from depth of, I believe it's like 6 inches is the shortest, and the longest is like 14 or 15 inches. So that'll be really nice to be able to use in order to, you know, obviously get our fuel readings for the Dakota gauges that he's got in there. So what we need to do is gonna go run over there. I'm gonna grab a piece of paper. We're gonna jot down as many measurements as possible. Once we've done that, then I can start to create some shapes out of using this template. And then once we have that, then we can apply it to the sheet of aluminum that we have, and we can go from there. So there'll be lots of cool stuff in here. We have to make some baffles. We'll probably dimple die them. Might get creative with the way I build this tank. I was considering bead rolling some end panels and some other bits and bobs that we could kind of do on it to just make it a little bit nicer. Unfortunately, you're not really going to see it that much. The car is going to be painted in a pearl white, and the entire chassis underneath is going like a very bright red, and almost everything under there, so the tank included. So it's yeah, he's got a cool little paint scheme that he's going with it, and yeah, it'll be kind of neat to see it together. So well, let's get into it. Right, so we are in the back trunk space area. Obviously this is a glass body, and what we want to do is I'm actually just going to cut this small section of glass out right here. I'm going to keep the steel frame so it still has all of its rigidity, but I'm just taking out this small bit of the floor here so that we can bring the fuel tank up into this area. And then he's going to make kind of like a partial shelf that'll go over top of it. But we want to bring this up to maximize the amount, you know, basically every, you know, liter or space that we can get fuel in is going to be super important with this to make sure we can capitalize on all the space we have to make this as big as possible for the very small amount of room that we have. So I'm going to cut that floor out and then we can start measuring. right, so we've made a little bit more room. So now we can kind of bring the tank up into this area, which should allow at least another probably 10 liters, if not more, if we can kind of, you know, measure it properly. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna kind of sit down and we're just gonna try and go over as many measurements as I can. I'm just gonna start writing some stuff down so we can start creating a cardboard template. All right, so what I have here, after a couple of measurements, is we're starting to create a box similar to this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna whack in a couple little 90-degree pieces just to kind of hold everything where it's gonna go. And then we can kind of hold this up into place and make sure that it is exactly where, you know, where I've kind of measured everything. So it's, you know, I was able to capitalize on the majority of the room so far with, you know, a little bit there to kind of, I had to allocate a bit of space for around the exhaust because I don't want the tank sitting too close to it. You know, I know that at the end of the exhaust it's not going to be that hot anyways, but I could kind of maybe double it up or make like, you know, I could make little heat shields that go over top of the stainless tailpipes, which would be a great little addition. So I think this is kind of our rough shape, and then obviously this will get closed in here, and then off the bottom I will make the little drop down for our fittings. And then this kind of from here to here, I just need to figure out this angle. And then we could technically add a little bit more on the top. So it just depends how, you know, how intricate we really want to get with this. But I'd like to say that that's still a fair amount of fuel, even if that was a simple box. So I think we'll get a couple liters out of it, you know. Don't entirely know the exact setup. We will have to measure that afterwards, but when we go and pressure test it. So I think what I might do is just try and fit it like this, and then I'll open it up, and then I can maybe stick these guys in there just so I know where everything's gonna sit. So let's go over and I'll see if we can fit it. So I think I'm gonna try and put this down. Yeah, that works. All right. So I'll just have a little look-sees under here. All right, so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm trying to achieve. This obviously will sit up a lot more, and we'll have a nice ample amount of room around each side of the exhaust. And then right here will be where the ports will be for the fuel. So this is kind of the idea. And what I'm gonna try and do now is take this to the table, and we're gonna build this now that I know my reference points, and then we can kind of work off of that. All right. So we know kind of the rough idea of what we're trying to achieve. So this makes it a lot easier in order to kind of create and build it. So I'll just get this out of the way. Some extra cardboard. So this is our front bit, this is our base, and then we have the back bit there. So if I tape all these together, then we can kind of play around with making the sides and these little bits here. Then we need to make the bottom bits, side bits, and we can kind of create this whole thing in one box. And then I'll remove the exhaust. We'll stick it up in there. I'll put the exhaust back in. We can see where it's going to sit, with making sure, obviously, everything's going to kind of work into play. So. We'll definitely try and make sure everything's square. And then what I'll do is I probably won't, I don't think I'll trace this directly onto the aluminum. I'll probably just use it as a reference point, and measure and kind of lay everything out on the aluminum, because when we go to bend that, break these edges, we're gonna lose material or gain material depending on where, we put that blade and where it bends. So we gotta make sure that we allocate for that, so that when we do, break, say, if we wanna make this out of one whole piece, we gotta make sure that this whole piece is then gonna match the opposite piece to that, and in order to put it together to weld it, so we got really nice seams. But that's, once we lay it out, I'll kind of explain that a little bit more. So what we can do now is we could make 3 sides. We're just gonna make these sides so that we can kind of get it set up properly. I'm gonna try and make these out of one piece, and I'm just gonna scribe where these bends are, and we're just gonna kind of run a blade so that it can bend itself. So I probably need to bring a new sheet on board. Okay, so what do we got? We have 350. I want to make sure I'm using this cardboard to its most potential. So I want to make sure I'm kind of just roughly laying this out in order to know. Yeah, so we want to go this way. So we'll go this way, 350. And then I know that this is 100, that's 50, and this is 100 mil. So we're gonna lay that out this way. May even just try and get a little bit more accurate. So we got 100, then 50, and then 100. Go up here. That's 100, 50, 100. So once I lay these out, you'll kind of get an idea of what I'm trying to do. So then I can I'll scribe these two, and then everything should bend. But what I am gonna do is just try and, let's see if I can get another one out of that. Oh, so close. So I'll go up here a bit more. Same deal. So that's one piece. Now we're just gonna duplicate it. We're gonna do another one. So 100, 150, 250. And this is like, you could do it a lot simpler, or obviously a lot more complicated. but it's a lot easier and cheaper to cut up a bunch of cardboard than it is a sheet of aluminum or steel or stainless, whatever you're making your tank out of. Or it doesn't even necessarily need to be a fuel tank. It could be a template for anything. But I've just definitely found that making this, if you take the extra time, it's just like making a buck, you know, a wire buck or a wood buck or anything. If you have a reference point that you can stick in there, I can check all the clearances for everything. I can make sure it's going to actually slide up in there. Maybe, you know, maybe I could create this whole thing and it's not going to fit, and then we have to kind of reinvent the wheel. So we're just going to cut this out now. Again, I have mentioned this, and I would definitely suggest it. If I had a piece, I'd be using it. But if you have a piece of glass that, you know, you could lay a you know, something down on your fab table and then lay a piece of glass down and then, you know, use this on the glass and actually cut it, you'll save your blades forever. Like, one blade will be able to do everything because you're cutting on the glass. It's not going to wear it out. I'm cutting on the fab table, so obviously we're killing this blade. But I do not have a piece right now, but I would suggest that if I was, to do more, Jordan, go get a piece of glass. And this straw board, like, versus just your traditional, you know, like kind of core flute style cardboard or something else, this stuff is amazing for templates. Like, it just has so much rigidity. It always just stays where it is. So if you're trying to build something and you want it to be stiff and kind of hold its shape, this stuff is definitely amazing to use. And the 48 ounce stuff is even better. It's obviously thicker, so it's a little bit, you know, harder to work with, especially for cutting and stuff. But again, that stuff's gonna be like almost double as strong as this. So, okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I'm gonna run a line along here. I'm gonna run a line along this one. And you can even use kind of a dull blade for this if you don't want to cut all the way through it. It's just trying to like kind of score the cardboard. But so now I've done both those. This should, I might just do it a little bit more. Don't think I'm quite, I think it was pressing a little bit too late. And then you can use tape too if you need to kind of hold it together once you get it there. This, there you go. So we have a nice clean break, and there's our 90 degrees. So like I was saying, now that we have this piece, we can kind of go, okay, there's our little setup. And then we can just tape this straight into place. Oh, okay, it would have totally worked if I had measured it properly. It's definitely not 50 mil. 75 mil. All B. Okay, so there you go. Imagine I had done that with the aluminum. What am I gonna do with this piece? Probably make something out of it, but cardboard, I'll tell ya. You can see what I've done there. 25 mil short. Ah, can't believe I did that. Ah. I've kind of just made a couple little ends here, and these are probably not even going to get cut out onto the aluminum until I have the actual shape of the tank right, because just kind of going off a few of the bends, I want to sort of make sure I'm getting it, you know, very exact. So this is purely just, I want to make these ends now so that I can stick this in the car itself, and I can make sure that everything is going to fit where it needs to go. But this is kind of the overall shape that I'm trying to kind of get, and then there'll be enough room for a little ballast in there, just to kind of help the fuel from kind of going back and forth, which would be a good thing. And then I have kind of a pretty cool idea I'm going to do with the filler cap and the sender on the top. And kind of the reason being why we cut that hole is just to gain, you know, that little bit more, you know, over that whole thing. That's probably two liters plus of fuel. But it's also to gain access to the sender and the filler as well, rather than kind of drilling a hole in the floor and having to reach down in there. At least this way everything's really convenient in order to get to, just in case of a problem area. Usually try to kind of like design certain things with the aspect of it failing, to make it easier to try and fix in case it does. Like, obviously, you know, you plan that it's never going to happen, but you also want to make sure, you know, if we're designing this and building it, that like it's not going to go on this real awkward spot where it's a nightmare to get to anything if you're driving down the road and something fails. You want to make sure everything's like easy to take apart. And I definitely learned that a lot when I was building the race car. I had the whole time in mind to make sure everything was very easy to take off. Pull our little gauge off. This was just kind of helping everything stay 90 degrees and true, which definitely helped out. Over there. So really, I'm just gonna stick a couple more pieces of tape along here just to make sure everything stays in where it should. Okay, so there you have it. This is our tank. And on the bottom here, I think I'm gonna add a little tang, because I do want the bottom of this to hold the fuel pickup and our drain plug as well. So I probably should make sure. So I got to build like a little drop thing off this where, you know, all the fuel will kind of go straight to the back. So it's probably going to have like, you know, a little bit of a fall kind of that way, something like that. And then this will kind of come in. I'll have two little things, and then I can just kind of cut and weld that in. But that is sort of our tank setup. You know, it's a little bit intricate, relatively, well, knock on wood, simple to do. So what we're gonna try and do now is, let's go over to the car. I'll hold this up into place where I think we want it, make sure that there's clearance on everything, and then we can kind of blow this apart and get it set up on the aluminum. And then we have our big old tank sliding up into place. Okay, so that's it. Something like that. So what I might do is tape it there, and then I can put the exhaust pipes back in. So if we just put those there, I'll put this into place, and then we'll just throw that there and that, go onto this side, throw it there like that. Okay, so looks good so far. I just held it up a little bit more. Okay, so now I need to stick these back into place. This is definitely the bonus of using these V-band clamps, just for pure fact of taking this on and off, which we've done 1,000 times. So now you can kind of see what we're working with here. So it has ample amount of room around the exhaust. There's probably about 40 to 50 mil on either side, so we shouldn't have any issues with heating. And then towards the back, you might see the fuel tank just a little bit poked down. That's obviously not the height where it's gonna sit. It's gonna sit higher up. And then we'll kind of have those little bits there. So I think this should work. It looks very small there, which is kind of funny. So they'd almost think that that's it. But it does sit a little bit low, so I could definitely have it sit up a fair bit more. What I'm gonna do is just grab a ladder and I'll just look from inside, making sure that it looks the part. But we got lots of clearance, which is awesome. Okay, so we got our big sheet of aluminum. It is 2.5 mil thick, and it does have the protective coating on it. Originally, we were gonna do a polished aluminum fuel cell, but what he's gonna do now is actually paint it the entire same colors all underneath the chassis in that red. And may even like texture coat it. I'm not sure what his plan is. So kind of helps us out a little bit. So technically the protective coating will still kind of help it, but it doesn't really matter too much. This is our fuel tank here. You know, kind of looking at it, it's roughly the same shape as like my steel kind of military jerry can. And I'm thinking like 20 liters here, so that's 40. And then maybe, you know, maybe like 25 on either side. So maybe like, yeah, or maybe less, maybe like 20. So maybe 60 liters, maybe 70 liters. I don't know, I'm kind of looking at it going, But the good thing is it fits really, really well. I am gonna alter the bottom of it slightly in order to kind of pick up that back area where I'm gonna put these bungs in. I don't really wanna make it any lower than it already is. So what I'm thinking is I'm just gonna put 2 little bungs down here. Yeah, usually kind of want to make a little pocket towards the back, but I was thinking we could taper this whole thing on an angle, which would kind of just, maybe it wouldn't look as good. Maybe I'll just do it as an add-on. Maybe that's a good idea. I'll build it, and then I'll cut this out, and we'll add the 2 ports or 3 ports that we're going to put on the back. So what I need to do now is transfer this onto this sheet of steel, then we'll go over to Liam's place and use his guillotine and his brake, and fingers crossed we get the math right, and we can bend all this up in, hopefully I'm thinking maybe one piece, 2 piece, 5, 6 pieces, maybe 4 pieces if possible. I'll probably do this whole one piece, and then this backside will be this piece and this piece. Potentially even do those ones if we wanted to get crazy, which wouldn't be that hard to do. And then all we have to do is just weld in these pieces here, and then obviously your seam. So the less welding possible, hopefully we can get the fitment right, to just, do a really nice TIG weld, and then we'll have filler, sender unit. Inside I have to make sure that we do put a little wall in there, and I'll just run some holes through it just to help baffle the amount of fuel kind of going one way to the other. But on the back side, along here, is actually where the sender is going to go. So the sender is going to sit in this corner, sits right down to the bottom, and then the pivot will come down here. I'll actually just explain that now. Our little float, this will be the sender down here, and this will kind of sit like that, and we'll have full, empty, full, empty. So I got to make sure that in this back area that the baffling that we put in there doesn't hinder where this is going to pivot, because we want to make sure this reads accurately. So what we need to do is break this down, and actually technically don't even need to break it down. I can just take reference off that, start doing some measurements on this, and we'll get this laid out, and then we can start trimming it. So you can kind of see our lines here. Probably a little bit tough to see with the light, but we got some markings. So this is kind of the back side and the underside. So what we're gonna do now is take this sheet over to Liam's place, and we're gonna trim it. Okay, so here we go. We got one done. This is one piece cut, and all I've done is I've actually just cut with a blade the material that needs to be taken away. So I know that these need to be cut out, and I'll have to use the grinder for those because I can't get them in the brake. I did screw up already. They're meant to be another 50 mil piece on top of this, and I was cutting it and there was a break. And when I put it in, I was getting a bit impatient. I should have double checked, triple checked it, and I trimmed it too short. So now on the other piece, this is the front side of the tank. This is our bend here. I need to add that 50 mil to this now, so I need to make a mental note of that. So we're gonna lay this one out. Same thing, scribe it. We'll just go and put it in the guillotine and chop it, and then we'll cut these sections out where we know they got to be cut, and then we'll kind of lay everything out on the table, and we'll have a look at it. Okay, so we got both of our pieces down. We got all of our measurements and our angles. Sorry, it is kind of hard to see. And then, you know, all of our areas where we need to do all of our breaks, and we try and label them with, you know, our arrows. So this is going to have to be broken 90 degrees, so we know it has to go this way, or you get the opposite arrows. So what I need to do is eliminate these corners. They all have to go, and then we can get these things ready to be broken in the break. And then once I have those broken, I'll kind of hold everything together, and that way I can just make sure that I get the ends on the bottom sides accurate. So we could even do another little cardboard template off of them. So I'm gonna cut these out now. Okay, so we have them cut out, and as you saw, I did use a little bit of wax on the blade. Definitely helps with cutting aluminum. And then I just ran around with the deburr and just went around the edge like that, just to make sure that there was no burrs from where they were cut, which they're nice and clean now. So what I'm gonna do is, there's just a few of these lines I need to transfer onto the backside in order to put them in the brake. Once they're done, yeah, we're basically kind of good to go with this. So I just want to make sure I transfer a few of these, and then we'll get over there and start getting a test panel, making sure we get that 90 degrees, a true 90 degrees is what we're after, and then we can kind of figure out our other angles as we go. I pressed the camera off rather than record. Good at that. It's bent. But I still have lots more bending to do, so I'm going to show you kind of what I've been doing. So all I did with a few scrap pieces is just make sure I was getting a true 90 degrees for the ones that I needed to, and then this one we kind of measured with the degree finder in order to kind of get a ballpark, and we just kind of did it a couple times to get it right. So we were always trying to be over or under your bend, if that makes sense. So you always want to be able to add a little bit more if you have to. So this is kind of what we've got so far. So this flange I was actually going to bend the opposite way and meet up with this, and then I was just going to weld along there, because this is where I kind of screwed up. But I'm actually kind of happy I did it, because when you look inside the car, you'll probably see a nice, you know, a nice break in here and here, rather than having a weld across this whole seam. So the weld's going to be down along here, so I'll just end up trimming this with the grinder. But essentially, this is kind of where everything's going to sit like that. So what we need to do now is bend these guys and try and do this. So, I mean, realistically, I would love to try and do that in one piece. Is it possible? Most definitely is possible. I'm going to try and do that. I think I can do this all out of one piece. I really do. And I need to make the baffle. So what I should probably do is make some internal measurements now, cut this out so that this sits together. I could even just lightly tack it. And then I can make a baffle for inside here, because I think I should only be able, I only really need one baffle, I think. I was going to put two in there, but it is out of 2.5. Single baffle with some holes in there and a few at the bottom with the little opening at the back. I should be okay. I'm just going to tape it together, sort of make sure it's all exactly where it is, and then I might just try and do these guys out of one piece. All right, so we got our two little holes marked out. This is going to be for the fuel cap. This is for the fuel sender. I want to do these now so I make sure I know exactly where to build that baffle inside and it's got room for the actual pivot. So I'm just going to use a 38 mil hole saw. We're going to do these, then we're going to stick this little gasket on there. We're going to mark out where those holes are, drill them, and then we'll know exactly where everything is going to sit. Okay, so here's where the sender's going to sit. And then over here, we will weld on our fuel cap onto this side. So they're kind of both symmetrical. And what I'm thinking here is I've kind of already set the needle, so I just have to shorten it a little bit in order for it to have the plunge come up at full and come down to read dead empty. So I just need to shorten it just slightly. I've already trimmed it a little bit. And in the kind of instructions, it kind of gives you a few measurements to go off of. And so what I've done is I've dog-legged the rod itself. So it'll come down. Here's our little foam plunger. So that's going to sit over here when the clamp's not in the way. It'll have enough room. It'll come up. That is a full tank up here, and then we'll come down to read empty, just at rest on the bottom. The reason why I dog-legged it over here is because I need to make a baffle that goes in here to help with the slosh back and forth of the fuel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it as close as I can, and then about here, where I know it can't touch, maybe a little higher. Actually, I'll probably just go straight down. So I'm just going to allocate and allow, say, 50 mil. I'll put a little break in it so it's still strong this way. But there's going to be a gap on that back side. And I'll come down from center, straight down like that. And then we'll come across here and we'll have this whole thing, and I'll just tack it into place and it'll kind of hold the rigidity. I might put a few small holes, but I'm also thinking I may not put any holes in it, because I'll have to have a couple at the bottom to allow the fuel at the bottom to run through. But then it has this whole side that's open. So if this is in here and you're going back and forth, at least it won't allow the fuel to kind of slosh back and forth really quickly. And then as well as we're getting a backbone and a strength all the way through. Right, so this is our baffle, and what I'm going to do is break this edge. Fuel sender is going to kind of fall down here, and what I want to do is I'm actually going to hole saw 3 areas here to allow fuel to kind of go back and forth on the bottom side, and then we'll do a little break on the bottom as well. So when we put it in, it'll have a little break on the bottom and a break here just to strengthen it, and then this will just get tacked in directly to it. So I'm going to find center. Save me, you gotta save me, save me, save me, you gotta save me, save me, save me. I've got these demons going on inside. Your love is the only way to satisfy. So now we have our 3 holes that are going to be down the bottom. And then this will allocate the bend mark that I'll bend these at upwards. So we need to trim that off. And then once that's trimmed, then we'll know that this is the bottom. So that is now allowing fuel to go pass through. And then this big section here will allow fuel to pass through. So I think that should be enough, and I don't think I'm gonna do any in here because I think from side to side, that'll really help hinder where the fuel goes. I could do like maybe 1, 2. Yeah, why not? Okay, so now we have a couple more holes. And then that will essentially allow fuel to come through. So all I'm gonna do now I could do as well, not that you'd ever see it, so I could bang 2 dimple dies in that. Purely, maybe just adds a little bit of strength. I might just do it just because there's no real reason for it. All right, so I do have these dies here, and all I'm gonna do is just stick these in and just make a simple little die. And I'm gonna do what Karl's done before. Just gonna put a block of wood down there and hit it with a mallet. Cute. It's actually a little bit bigger, so the dimple's gonna be off slightly. Okay, so we can now cut this out. Bend, bend. So this is our baffle. So we need to cut along here, and then we're gonna break this edge 90 degrees. So I'm just using a little test piece here. Just gonna throw it in, make sure it's still 90 degrees. Gonna throw this guy in. And then we have a 90-degree break. So now we can sit this inside the baffle after we cut this out. And this is our new baffle. Fuel can still fall through here, and then we will have that section here with those 2 holes. All right, now that we have it cut, you know, that's sort of the base, so fuel will still be able to fall through here at the bottom. This will allow fuel to come through as well. And down this end here, this is where we have the little gap where our sender will go up and down, so fuel will still be able to pass by here. So it should work. I caught myself with a measurement, which was really good, so I'm just gonna trim this out. This will sit in. I also had a bit of an idea last night. I was speaking to my mate Paul just about where I was gonna put these fittings, and when I was thinking about it, I had mentioned I was gonna take this lip out. There's a lip that travels the whole way across. And I think what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna leave it there. And what my idea behind it is that when you accelerate and the fuel kind of comes up and sloshes, it won't kind of slosh all the way past and kind of come up in this area. Say if the breather was right here, it would kind of slosh, hit this, and then drop down. Don't know. I can't seeing it being any worse to have it in there, so I'm just gonna leave it, and maybe that'll be the cause, you know? Maybe I'm a genius, or maybe not. So let's quickly trim this out. Just put my safety gear on. now that we have this sorted, this is essentially what the baffle looks like. And we can probably try and install this and see what it looks like. Try and see if this fits. Which it already doesn't. All right, so a little bit of trial here and error. What I've done is I've kind of set the level on everything, made sure everything is square. It's all kind of taped into place. We got our little angle kind of clamped down to the table. I have my 90-degree on this side, taped in. Everything's kind of clamped down, and you know, it's kind of, well, it's basically exactly where it's going to be. Everything's square this way and that way. This is just going to get tacked straight into there. So what I've done was, if I can kind of hold this up, I must have screwed up the measurements on the baffle itself. And when I was measuring it, everything was slightly moving, so it wasn't quite, you know, exactly where I wanted it. So what I'm going to do is just make another piece, and I'm totally happy to do that. I should have just done it out of cardboard in the first place. Like I had mentioned previously in the video, that, you know, it's way easier to waste a piece of cardboard than it is a piece of aluminum. So luckily I'll be able to utilize this for something. I'll probably just trim this off and I can just throw this in the pile, or just throw it in, and you know, one day I'll need a piece for something. So what I'm going to do is, obviously I wasn't too happy with my original template, and what I'm thinking is I'm going to make a cardboard one that's quite accurate, and then what I'll do is I'll recut it. I'll recut these out, I'll do some nice dimple dies, and then we can kind of move forward from there. What I'll do now is I'm probably just going to use a bit of tape, kind of roughly do where I want it, and then I will transfer this onto a piece of cardboard. I'll cut it all out, and then we'll make sure it looks the job, and then we can recut this out. Okay, so what I've done is I've used some tape, and I've kind of gone, and in the areas where there was a massive gap, I've just kind of roughly laid the tape where it needs to go. So then what I'll do now is I'll cut this out onto a piece of cardboard, and then I'm going to get these little areas here. So we're just going to make the whole thing out of cardboard. Okay, so this is the new and improved one. Fits 1,000 times better than the other one. And I'm gonna leave it exactly like this. I don't think it is necessary to put 2 holes in here, because all the fluid can flow through here. And then this is still allowing enough room. What I might do is actually just pull all this plastic off, clean it up, clean inside here, stick this in, tack it so that everything doesn't move, and then I can start to build the outside of this. The baffle inside as I've shown before, and I've wiped everything. I use Metho to make sure everything is really, really clean. Yeah, luckily Liam was kind enough to lend me his MIG welder with the aluminum wire in there, which is just ridiculous to use. I've actually haven't really used them that much. This probably a handful of times because I just usually TIG everything when I'm doing aluminum, but this is making it really nice. So all I'm doing in here, I don't care about the way the weld looks as long as it's got really good penetration, and all it is just holding the baffle into place. Once that's held in, then we can start to work around and get everything else sorted. So I'm gonna jump in on this side. If I can lean over, I'm gonna weld a bit on the back, just making sure everything's square where it should be. With these, like, I'm traveling pretty fast, like traveling way faster than I would with like a MIG welder with standard steel wire in there, which is kind of weird to use, but it's getting like a really nice weld. I'll zoom in after and you can kind of see it's doing the job. Really good penetration. Probably on the bottom side of the tank will have a little bit of distortion, but that's totally fine. We can kind of sand that out because this is getting painted. So happy to you know, deal with that. And what I'm trying to do is just make sure everything kind of stays square. I'm just going to get this little one on the bottom here. I'll tell you what, using this compared to a TIG, trying to get in there and with your filler rod, it's pretty fast. If you jump on the other side, you'll be able to see. Just allow you to get in there quick and easy. And that's like not going anywhere, which is awesome. So I'm gonna try and just get the top now, where everything's kind of sitting. Okay, well, first thing, I melted the end off the TIG welder, so I'm using my tiny little one. This with 170 amps going through it or more is going to be touch and go. But what I need to do right now, before I kind of move any further, is I want to get the bungs and everything welded in and sorted so that when I go to put these side plates in, there's no more debris or drilling or anything needed. So what I'm going to do is, this is going to be return, this is going to be a drain plug, and this is going to be the pickup. I did think about making like a drop down plate and have it all angled and stuff, but I really don't think it's that necessary. I think the design of this and how it's going to sit, it should just pick up enough fuel, and hopefully Glenn never runs it dry anyways, because that would be super bad for the injection system. So what I'm going to do is drill these out quickly, and then I'll pull this plastic off, we'll drop these in, and we will neatly try and weld these in. So we got the bungs welded in. And to be honest, I am no pro aluminum welder, like at all. Like I've only just self-taught, kind of just learned how to do it. So every time I'm doing it, I'm obviously learning. So I'm no pro like all the rest of a lot of guys out there that, you know, post perfect photos of perfect dimes. So I can't do it yet. Maybe one day, but I'm happy with those. Good penetration. Hopefully there's no pinholes, but we will pressure test this obviously. So what we're gonna do is just flip this up, and I'm gonna stick one more in the top for a breather. So again, we got our pickup, a bung that's just gonna be in there in case we need to drain this fuel tank, and then the return. So there's gonna be a pickup, return, and a bung, and in the top we will do a breather. So I'm gonna stick it up, I'm gonna drill that hole, and then we'll keep moving forward. So now we have kind of everything in there. Technically I could weld the top in, but we probably don't need to do that yet. I am going to be kind of flipping this upside down and all around and stuff, so I think it'd probably be alright to just leave it for now. Yeah, super happy with that. So we got our bungs there. That one's just off center a little bit, but that's because of our baffle that we've had to put in. And we got our bits here. So what I'm going to do is just do a little tidy up on the table, and then we're going to get that sheet up here, and we're going to start to measure these guys up. All right, so now that we have the initial shape figured out, we need to create and build these sides. So that's what I'm going to do now. I got my sheet back out here. We're going to lay out some lines, and we're going to go and trim them. We're going to bend them, and fingers crossed you can get it right the first time, and then we can get these all tacked in. We'll clean the tank out prior to that, and then virtually we can come start welding this up. Make sure you test all your bends, get everything right. I did like 3 of these. Bit of a waste of material, but I want to make sure I'm wasting this little piece before I'm wasting the actual piece. So now we can slide this puppy on in. We're just going to double check that, and then we'll do our 90 degree the opposite way. One thing I just really want to quickly cover, and I'm sure there's 1,000 videos that like do the math. There is actually one I've seen on, oh, what is it? I think it was like on an old episode of Trucks, and the guy explains the radius and how much material you lose or gain while doing that. With this, I know that it's 1 mil over the material, so this is 2.5 mil, so I know 3.5 mil. So if you want to add kind of that 1 mil to your material before you bend it, that's kind of how we're getting it. So I know that if this is sitting in here and it's tight, I know I have to add 1 mill on the top of this to break it at 90 degrees for it to sit on it properly. Because I've definitely done it several times where I've gone to bend it and, you know, thinking I'm doing all the math and do it all on the center line, and then I'm kind of screwed. So this one was on the center line, this one's under slightly, and then this one will just be under slightly as well. So hopefully she'll come together. But if not, we have a grinder and a hammer and bash it all together. Oh mate, it'd take them off, that's for shit. All right, let's go check it out. Cut. All right, so we have one side welded on. Actually didn't turn out too bad. And doesn't look like there's any leaks or anything. Went over, there's no pinholes yet, but we won't know that until we actually pressure test it. I've welded on the filler cap, so now this can be spun on. And if we do leave the logo, that's tight. The logo, the Aeroflow logo on the top, runs parallel with the tank. So this is going to be the way you're going to view it. So you'd look in and you'd see that. So just a little thing for making sure it's not upside down or crooked. So that's going to be where you fill it. And then we'll have a breather here, and then the sender's going to go in here. And then inside, let's spin this around. We have our baffling in here. So the fuel will be able to go through. We got our pickup. This will be a plug for draining it. And then this will be our return, or vice versa. And then in here, there's nothing, because we do want, where the sender unit sits right here, we want to make sure that the sender unit has enough room to play with. So I'm going to mock all that up right now, making sure that everything's going to work with that, because once this is welded in, we won't have any access to it. So I'm going to play with that now, and then we'll manually operate it, make sure it's going to do its job.
My money on pretty things, diamante shoes, and all these diamond rings. Yes, I spend my money on these fancy cars, on a Jack in the Box, and old trips to Mars. Yes, and I ain't got no shilling left for me. Spent all my money on expensive clothes, on a mink fur coat, then I bought a house that goes.
So there's our sender. Here's our rod. Our float's down here. And then I've kind of dog-legged this so it passes by our baffle. And then this comes up. Full tank. Comes down. No fuel. Full tank. Empty. And it's just got to adjust it to just make sure it just sits off and just sits before actually making contact. It'll be about maybe 5 to 10 mil on the top and bottom. Okay, she's all cleaned out. Cleaned it with Metho. We wiped it out. Kind of just ran a wire brush across a few of the welds, making sure everything was clean. So now we can get that guy mounted on here, and then we'll start to trace out the rest of the profile and get this one fitted.
Caribbean cruise. Yes, I spent all my money on these pretty things, but I ain't got no shilling left for me on a Jack in the Box, and old trips to Mars. Yes, I no, I ain't got no shilling left for me. Yes, I spent my money on swimming, on a lot of things, don't think I'll ever use. And I spend my money on these pretty things, and I ain't got no shilling or left for me. expensive clothes on a mink fur coat. Then I bought a house that goes. 'Cause yes, I spent my money on a swimming pool, on a lot of things don't think I'll ever use.
All right, well there she is. This is very exciting. It's a little bit warm still, but I'm just gonna throw these under here so I can sit it on there. You can kind of spin it around, but what I'm just gonna do is, this is getting painted, so I don't really have to worry about the scratches or anything. And what I'd like to do is just kind of just go over it and then maybe hit it with the Scotchy. But I'm just using 180 at the moment on the sander, and we're just gonna kind of go over a few areas. Just kind of where the areas where where I welded the baffle in.
Lot of things don't think I'll ever use, and I spend my money on these pretty things, and I ain't got no shilling no left for me. Spend all my money on law of booze, on drug cocktails. Spend all my money on these pretty things, but I ain't got no shilling left for me.
All right, just a quick update. We've welded some tabs on the bottom side. This will pick up the bottom of the spreader bar, and then I'm just making my mount off the back here now, and this is going to pick up the back of the cross member where the coilover is attached to. And I'm just using some 6mm by 50 by 50 angle, and I've kind of run it opposite of this one, so this one's got the angle coming this way, so it kind of holds the load, and then this way will kind of hold the load that way, and I'll just put a couple tacks along here as well. So I'm just going to finish welding this off, and this thing we can drill some holes, and then we can put this thing in. All right, so we got our back tab welded on. You can kind of see under here. And I just did a little stitch in the center. So the cross member will sit there. And then on the front side, we have these nice little tabs. And the spreader bar will sit on the top of these. So what I'm gonna do now is scribe center, drill a hole, pilot hole, and then we'll hold it up into place. I got 50 by 50, so I know my center's 25. All right, so now we'll go put this up underneath the tank, and then we'll mark our holes, and then we can get to bolting this up. All right, we are done. Time to install this thing. So I'll just kind of give you a bit of a 360-degree view of this. It's pretty simple, but definitely was still quite intricate to make. So, kind of sliding off there. Worked out really well. Got our nice little tabs there. So this is what's going to kind of hold it into place. Again, we got our pickup, a bung for drainage, and our return. Up the top, we have our sender that's installed. We have our breather and our filler cap. On the back side, we have our mount, so that'll hold it. And then underneath here, this is where the exhaust is going to come through. So there's ample amount of room around the exhaust that it won't get hot. But yeah, it definitely looks pretty cool. So I think what we need to do now is install this thing, and we can get the exhaust fixed up back into place, and then we can call this thing done. All right, she's going up and in.
I woke up in the middle of the night, opened my eyes, said my oh my, I'm dreaming of you. Well, oh, my dreams are sweet when I lay me down and sleep, not dreaming of you.
Oh, baby. Locked and loaded. All right, well, there she is, mounted. Kind of see how it all lines up. I kind of tried to hide these tabs underneath the exhaust so it's nice and clean. Everything's just a bit covered in dust, but I reckon that's gonna look pretty cool. Here's your back side. And then this only sits maybe 50 mil lower than the diff. So if it is a problem, I might put a little skid plate along here, but I think it'll be okay. It's got ample amount of clearance all the way around, kind of a 5 mil gap that runs all the way along. This thing is installed.
You can tell your mama and your daddy too, your brother and your sisters and your best friend too. I'm dreaming of you.
All right, so now that it's installed, you can kind of see how we did the top, where I trimmed out the floor here. And what he'll end up doing is making a nice little cover that'll kind of come over, maybe even come and bend down into this with a little bit of pinch weld around the edge to seal it. But it's nice and close on the back side. And then we got your filler here, and then your sender again and your vent. So it'll just basically be a matter of popping up the trunk when he's at the servo, bang, fill it up, trunk down, and then he was just trying to keep kind of the outside of the car super clean without a filler cap coming out the side and that. So, you know, and kind of we were allowed probably another at least 2.5 liters by lifting it up past the floor, which was a bonus. So, you know, just again, maximizing that amount of space. So, yeah, let's look underneath. Again, we kind of just tried to hide the bolts somewhat behind the exhaust, and we just used some 1/2 inch or 3/8 bolts, sorry. And they go straight up through, mount on the top, and then in behind here, they mount up. We got 2 there, and this thing is solid as a rock. So the tabs that I used, I think I kind of try to make them slightly overkill so that they won't tear or anything like that. Still ample amount of room all around the exhaust, which is really nice. So hopefully we don't have any heat issues, and if the tank does get warm, then I will make a little heat shield that'll kind of mount to the exhaust. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. You know, like utilizing none of the space that we actually had to make this. We kind of were able to, you know, somewhat create enough space. And yeah, kind of how I'd mentioned before, we did measure up a couple of our steel jerry cans that are 20 liters, and like 20, 40, probably a 65 liter tank, I think it would be, which is, you know, probably still quite small for the size of this tank, but he's also, you know, gonna just be kind of driving it around town and stuff like that. So I think it'll be quite good for, you know, what he's gonna use it for, which is good. The exhaust was somewhat, you know, difficult to do, to kind of get around this tubular K-frame that's been put in. But, you know, we have a few V-bands, so we can kind of take it. It's in a few different pieces, so everything can be removed and reinstalled quite easily, which is really nice. So I think overall, you know, with the limited amount of space for the exhaust and the tank, we achieved a really good result with the area that we were working with. So I'm really pleased with it. I hope he is as well, and it'll just be really nice to kind of nip it all up and yeah, see this thing start to transform into a real car. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. It was just a little bit different of a video, kind of hand fabricating that from, you know, kind of the cardboard template that we had used to a real tank that's been pressure tested, and you know, should hold enough fuel to get this hot rod bombing around the streets. So thanks very much for watching. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, hit notifications, and we'll see you next week on a very exciting episode of that thing getting really dirty. So we'll see you guys next time. Thanks very much.